What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are staying safe and you've been doing well since the last time I posted. Now, today's video is an incredibly awful, horrific, tragic case, and that's the case of Chad Doerman. Now, if you're lucky enough to not know who Chad Doerman is right now, allow me to be the one to introduce to you this piece of human scum. On June 15th, 2023, so not too long ago, in Ohio, Chad Doerman decided to execute his three young sons, 7-year-old Clayton, 4-year-old Hunter, and 3-year-old Chase. Three beautiful young children who lived with him, his wife, and their teenage stepsister. And he decided to just with premeditation, snuff their lives out. Now, I don't know about you guys. I know I've seen a number of law enforcement officials echo this point, and I agree with this, that whenever violent crime happens, it's awful. What shooting, stabbing, whatever it is, it's awful. But when you add children as the victims, it just ratchets up the intensity of the awful and the evilness that's happening. And it's just an extra layer of just terribleness that happens when children are the victims of violent crimes. And some people just don't like hearing about children being the victims of violent crime, which I totally get. So if this isn't the video for you, you can click off from this one, and I can see you in the next video. No hard feelings. I totally get it. I have a hard time listening to some of this myself, but I think that stories like this are important to tell. So without any further ado, let's get into this story, shall we? Now, I think it's important, before we dive into the date of where everything happened in, to see what, if anything, we can glean from beforehand. Like, were there warning signs? What was he acting like? What was Chad doing? What were people around Chad saying? You know, all that typical background stuff that might give us a fuller picture of what happened here. Now, for the most part, except for one neighbor, which I'll talk about that neighbor in a little bit, so leave that neighbor in the back of your mind. Most people thought Chad was just acting normally. I mean, his boss said he was acting normally. Recently, before the case happened, he was coaching one of his kids at third base. And baseball, some of them said he looked a little distracted, but nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that raised any red flags for anybody for the most part. Because yeah, we all act strange, we all act distracted from time to time, whether it's stuff going on at work or stuff going on at school or whatever it may be. We all get, distracted from time to time. That doesn't mean we're going to go out and hurt people. It just means, we got a lot on our mind. We're just trying to work through all of it. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean we're going to go out and do what Chad does. But no one ever suspected anything off. And if they did, nothing ever rose to a level where they were like, okay, I got to go contact somebody about this. I got to call his wife about it. I got to call the police or Child Protective Services, whatever that may be. No one did that. I mean, from the outside looking in, this seems to be the perfect blended American family. I mean, this was a guy in his early 30s at the time who had his young children, who married a woman who had a teenage daughter. I mean, he's got a job. His wife stays at home with the kids all day. She homeschooled these three young boys. I mean, this looks to be a slice of the American dream that so many other people, Americans and around the world, would love to have. They would love to have this beautiful blended family and being able to support their spouse, so the spouse can stay home with the kids and teach the kids the way they want these kids to be taught. And that's a great and beautiful thing that so many people would love to have. And he just decided that he wanted to throw that all away. But like I said, no one suspected anything. That, after the crime, he would later lie about how much sleep he was getting and things of that nature, but nothing that he ever would have said post crime happening ever suggested that any of this was going to happen. You know what I mean? So let's fast forward to the day beforehand. He wakes up his teenage daughter, they said at about 6 a.m. or so, and basically apologizes to her for anything he's ever done to her. Now, that by itself is weird as weird as heck. And because I know we've all been teenagers before, and if someone woke us up at like 6 a.m. to apologize for anything they've ever done to us, it's not ominous in of itself, but it's just strange. You're like, you couldn't have waited till I woke up for this. You couldn't have, you know. But the stepdaughter obviously didn't think too much of it. So she goes back to sleep and goes about her day. So fast forward to the next day, the day of the crime, June 15th, 2023. It starts off like any other normal day for any other number of Americans and any other of his neighbors would have. He wakes up early that morning, gets dressed, gets ready for work, and gets to work at about 7 a.m. And on his way to work, he looks up a song titled Happy in Hell by Colt Ford. And the prosecution really made sure to mention this a lot because they did like a press conference post all of this case wrapping up, talking about a lot of the details and things like that. And they really kind of hammered that point home as because some of these song lyrics, if you want to look it up, you can. So he gets to work, he looks up that song, and then at some point that morning, he calls his mother. He calls his mother because he's like, Mom, I've been having some confusing thoughts. You know, he's not really saying anything super ominous, but he's like, hey, Mom, I've been having some confusing thoughts. And she goes, oh, go to the Kroger here. They got a little clinic that you can go to. You can probably talk to someone, maybe get some medicine, you know, things of that nature. So he leaves work at about 9:30 and heads to this Kroger. He gets to this Kroger at about 9:45 or so. Before going over to the little clinic that his mother suggested that he go to, he stops in the vitamin and supplements aisle for a minute. Now, I tried to zoom in to see what he was looking at, because you can clearly see him on the security footage walking into the store and going into the grocery aisle and then going over to the clinic, all of that stuff. You can clearly see him doing all that, but I just couldn't tell what he was looking at. I know that prosecution was asked what he was looking at, and they didn't really have an answer for that either. They just didn't know what he was looking at. So he stays in that aisle for about a minute or so, and then he goes over to this little clinic, and they made a point of noting that this clinic wasn't the type of clinic where you could go to really get any serious mental health help, because they were assuming that may have been why he was going there, but that's just an assumption. Now, this was a place where you could get your flu shot, get some antibiotics, those little clinics that we all see when we walk into like a Target or a CVS or something like that, you know what I mean? It's not a place where he could have gotten the help. Maybe they could have referred him to somewhere and say, hey, there's a mental health clinic down the street or on the opposite block, whatever it may be, but there was no one at the clinic. I don't know if they were just closed that day, if they were just, you know, whatever, having to deal with something in the back of the building. Who knows? But no one was there, and he didn't stick around long enough to see maybe someone was going to come up to the thing and talk to him. He hangs around this clinic for like 90 seconds or so. Then he leaves. On his way home, he stops and gets a 16-ounce single can of beer. Then he goes home and goes into the shed. Now, when he gets home, he's alone. I think the teenage daughter, I don't know if the teenage daughter was with the mother and the kids at this point, because they were out running errands, or if she was at school or something. I'm not 100% sure where she was at that time. But these young boys are out with their mother, and they're running errands, you know what I mean? And he's in the house, he's doing whatever he's doing in the shed. And when these neighbors get home, these kids who were so excited to see their dad, like they get so excited, they're like, Dad's home. They run up to him and they embrace him. Now, this moment right here is why I think that neighbor, not on purpose, might be a little blowing his memory out of proportion, because they were talking to this guy, and he was essentially going, oh, he was always yelling at him, he was always arguing with his wife, stuff like that. Now, I'm not doubting that he saw arguments and he saw yelling and things of that nature. I just think, knowing what Cherub would go on to do, he just kind of blew that out of proportion, because it was like, okay, if he was always yelling at his children and always yelling at his wife, these children wouldn't have run up to him and embraced him and wouldn't have been so happy to see him, like, oh my God, Dad, tell him this is great. We get to play around all day with Dad. This is amazing. We get to just hang around with Dad all day. It's going to be great. So that's why I think that particular neighbor might be misremembering stuff, but not on purpose, you know what I mean? So for the rest of that day, he spends time in the yard playing with the kids. He's doing yard work. So if you would have driven by earlier that day when he's outside, nothing would have been amiss. It just would have been a normal dad who either had the day off or left work early or whatever it may be, just in the yard playing with his kids. It looks like they're having a grand old time. Then about lunchtime, so a little after noon or so, he goes into the house because his wife makes lunch for him. So he sits down, all the kids are there, he's sitting there. He turns to his wife and he goes, "This will be my last good meal." Now, that is incredibly freaking ominous. And I know obviously his wife is concerned at that statement, but she's concerned, but she's obviously not thinking that he's going to go do what he's going to go do. So maybe she logs it in the back of her mind as, I'm just going to look after him, be careful, because maybe he's been dealing with a lot at work, or maybe they've been arguing a lot recently and he's just being stressed, because we can all get stressed and we can all say weird things from time to time, but that doesn't mean we're going to go do what Chad Doerman does. So he eats lunch, then he calls his father and he says, "Clayton's going to be the hardest." Now, if I'm the dad, I'm like, "Excuse me, what are you talking about? What are you doing? What are you doing with the kids that he's going to be the hardest one?" Now, I'm not saying that he should have thought that he was going to go do what he did, but that maybe it's just the amount of time I've spent, not just with this case, but looking at true crime in general. I would have been like, that is incredibly ominous, and I'm going to come over and see what is going on. So his father obviously doesn't do that. He probably logs it in his memory as, "That's incredibly strange, and I might call him later." Who knows? But he goes back outside and continues playing with the kids and continues doing his yard work till about 3:30 or so. So he comes inside at about 3:30 and starts reading the Bible to Hunter. So he's sitting there reading scripture. Now, I would like to know personally what scripture he was reading. Was he reading some "Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so"? Or was he going some really fire and brimstone, death and murder kind of scriptures? Because those are both in there, whether you're a Christian or not, and I'm not. But those types of verses are both in there. The whole happy-go-lucky "Jesus loves me" scriptures, and then the whole "I'm going to rain down hellfire and brimstone on y'all." I would like to know what he was personally reading to him, but we just don't know what he was reading to him. So about 15 minutes later, 3:45 or so, he starts pacing around the house going, "Chad knows what's right. Chad knows what's right." He's mumbling to himself. He's reading scripture. He's got a Bible in his hand. He's pacing around the house. And then right about 4:00, he goes to the gun safe. And then his wife goes, "You're scaring me," because she's concerned that he's gonna hurt himself. And he goes, and he assuages her fears, and he goes, "I'm just joking around." And then at about 4:00, he turns to the boys and goes, "You're the best boys ever." Now, they all decide to go lay down for a nap in the master bedroom after this, because they're like, maybe he's just been stressed at work recently. Maybe it's because we all get stressed from time to time. And as you guys would hopefully agree with me on, a good nap or a good sleep helps a lot. It doesn't cure everything, but it definitely helps your mind to recharge and rest and all that stuff. But we obviously know that's not what Chad was thinking at the moment when he goes back into the bedroom for that final time. So they all lay down. The teenage daughter doesn't go into the bedroom with them. She's like chilling on the couch watching TV when Chad, his wife, and these three boys go into the bedroom. Now, shortly after they go into the bedroom, Chad jumps up and goes to the gun safe that he left unlocked from a few minutes ago from that interaction with his wife. So he goes over there, and they're convinced that he's going to hurt himself. They're not thinking that he is going to hurt them. So they start pleading with him, like, "Dad, honey, please don't hurt yourself. We can solve this. We can take care of this." All the things that you would say to someone that you love, that you think is about to hurt themselves, they're saying to him. And then his wife jumps up, grabs her cell phone, goes to call 911. So he steps forward, he grabs it, and he tosses it. And he goes, "It's too late for that." Now, instead of turning the rifle on himself, which obviously knowing what he would later do, would have been the preferable outcome in this situation, because more innocent lives would have been spared if he had done that. I'm not advocating for self-harm, but just in this particular case, that would have been the preferable outcome to these 3 young boys dying. But so he goes over to the gun, he grabs the gun safe, he's doing all that, then he turns the gun on his family. And at this point, he opens fire on Hunter, the middle child, shoots him multiple times. And at this point, his wife was just begging him not to hurt himself, begging the man she loves to put the gun down, we can work through this, all that kind of stuff. She starts to realize that he's not going to hurt himself, he's going to start killing us. So she screams for the kids to run. So Clayton, the oldest, runs out the back door. And at this point, the stepdaughter saw the first shooting when he shot Hunter multiple times, because she heard the noise of them trying to beg their father and her husband not to hurt himself, and she had gone over to the bedroom to see what was going on with the noise, and saw the initial shooting of one of her stepbrothers getting shot multiple times by his father. So the oldest leaves, he runs out the back door, and Chad chases him out the back door. And then he slowly stops, picks up his gun, and the prosecution said it was about 50 to 70 yards. And he shoots him. And then Clayton falls, and then the stepdaughter had followed her Chad out the back door, because she was trying to help these kids not get hurt. And the mother's inside. She's calling 911. She has to call 911 twice. She's trying to render aid to her son, this kid that just got shot multiple times. And then Chad's outside. He walks up to this kid again. He shoots him multiple times. And then the stepdaughter hears the youngest crying, and she realizes, oh my God, Chase is still in the house. So she runs up to the bedroom, back to the house, picks Chase up, and desperately tries to flee with him, while the mother's still trying to render aid and call the police and get Chad to stop this. She's not doing anything. I want you guys to make sure she's trying to help these children, just like the stepdaughter is trying to as well. They're just doing slightly different things. So she runs out the front door. Chad chases her down. And some of this audio is actually captured on like a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera. So she starts to beg for her life, because Chad's got this gun pointed right at her head. And he's telling her, put him down, put him down, put him down. And you can hear her on this Ring doorbell saying, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me. So she gets forced to put this 3-year-old boy down. And he tries to shoot him initially, but he ran out of bullets. So he reloads this house, and this 3-year-old boy, I can't even imagine the pain and the thoughts that are going through his head, having to run from his father that's already killed his 2 older brothers. So he desperately runs back to the house, trying to hide, probably trying to get to his mother as well. It's just an awful scenario, all this that happened. So he reloads. At this point, the mother's outside. She was obviously gone off to the other kid as well. She's trying to render aid to all these children. She had called the police. The police were on their way. And then she starts wrestling with Chad for the gun. She puts her thumb over the barrel, and she's trying to fight this gun away from him. And then at some point during that struggle, Chad bites her. He physically bites her. Then he shoots her and injures her thumb, because like I just said, she has her thumb over the barrel. And then he shoots and kills his youngest son, 3-year-old Chase. Now at this point, he calmly goes about collecting all the bodies, all 3 of them. You got the one kid that's probably still in the house. You got the kid in the backyard, and you got Chase right here. So he collects Clayton, Hunter, and Chase's bodies. He displays them in the front yard, and he just sits on like the steps that they had at the house. Now cut to the police body cam footage when the police show up. He's just sitting there chilling, like he's taking a smoke break, or like he's eating his lunch or something. He's not listening to any of the police commands to give up, to surrender, put your hands in the air. He's not listening to any of it. Now, thankfully, on the police body cam that you can go watch, and I encourage you to, the boys' bodies are blurred out. So thankfully, you don't have to see that if you want to go watch the police body cam footage. But you can clearly see what is supposed to, what's, you clearly know rather, what's supposed to be behind those, that little blur and those block. And you can hear his wife going, he took my life from me. You can hear the dog barking in the background. Then they finally get him in the cuffs. They have him on his stomach. He's not concerned with anything he did. He's calm as can be. He goes, can I roll over? Can I sit up? He's like, that dog's not going to hurt you. Not talking about anything you just did. The police are going, hey man, what's going on? He's not talking to him. So they arrest him. They bring him back to the cars, and in the audio you can hear him say, I did it, take me to jail. Now, fast forward to the trial / plea bargain part of this deal. He initially pleads not guilty, and then he ends up pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. And then through the legal maneuvering, he gets the confession to the police, the interrogation after they brought him back to the station, thrown out because they proved that they violated his Miranda rights. Now, I tried to find that full interrogation to watch it. I only saw the little clips that were in that press conference that they showed off. Now, he was essentially trying to plead insanity. He was trying to prove that he was mentally ill. He was lying to people about how much sleep he got, going back and forth. But in this interrogation, when he was asked how many kids that he had, he said 4, because he's obviously including his stepdaughter. And then he named his sons, not from oldest to youngest or youngest to oldest. He named them in the order that he killed them. So he went Hunter, Clayton, Chase. That's the order that he named these boys in. Now, he was trying to be like, I don't know what happened, I don't know what I did, that sort of thing that you would expect someone trying to mount that sort of insanity defense to do. He also was saying, I should have killed her first. So he's trying to be like, oh, I don't know what happened, I don't know why I did it, all this sort of stuff. But fast forward a little bit, he's in jail, he's talking to his mother. He doesn't give her specifics, but he goes, oh, I know exactly why I did it. I know what I was thinking. And then after that, he calls his brother and goes, and he compares himself to Hitler, going, hey, I'm going to be essentially worldwide known, just like Hitler was. Now, they were set for this mental competency hearing, essentially, because you can't just plead not guilty by reason of insanity. You obviously have to prove that not just you have a mental illness, but that whatever mental illness that you have impeded your ability to understand right from wrong and the nature and the criminality of your actions. So they were just a couple days away from that hearing. And in Ohio specifically, where this case takes place, there's only 4 different specific mental illnesses that they accept from that kind of plea, from that kind of not guilty by reason of insanity defense. But out of seemingly nowhere, they're getting ready for this hearing. They're prepping for trial, because this is a death penalty case. So keep that in mind. The defense comes up with a plea deal. And they bring this to the prosecution. The prosecution brings it to the family. The mother and the stepdaughter are all for it because it saves them having to testify. The prosecution doesn't have to make them testify, doesn't have to drag their community through this. So with the family's blessing, they accept this plea deal. He gets 3 life without parole sentences plus 16 years, because he was initially charged with 21 different counts, and I believe it was also 9, I could be slightly wrong on that number, 9 aggravated murder charges with regards to the different children and the different shots he fired. So he's facing the death penalty. So this plea comes from him and his lawyers trying to desperately save his life. And they accept this, so he gets 3 life without parole sentences. And that's where he is right now, where he deserves to be. He belongs in prison. Now we gotta move to what my thoughts on what he did are, why he did it. Now, we obviously don't know why exactly he did what he did, because he never quite said the reasons why he did what he did. But I definitely have some thoughts and opinions on why he did this. I think that he hated his wife. Why he would have hated her, I don't know. She seems like a nice, beautiful woman who was home with the kids, raising these kids, helping him. She loved him. I think he hated her. Why he hated her, even if he said that he hated her, we'll never know. So he's going about this, going, I hate her, I gotta do something to harm her. Now, he obviously initially thinks of hurting her and ending her life. And then he goes, wait, I got a better idea. If I kill these 3 children, she'll have to live with that for the rest of her life. Now, that raises the question of, okay, why did he not also kill the stepdaughter? And I'm not quite sure about that. I've heard a few other people speculate on this, and this is what probably makes the most sense, is because those were his biological children. And yeah, that was his stepdaughter. She was in the house, but because she wasn't blood related to him, he didn't think that he had the right to end her life as well, because these were his 3 young children that he was blood related to. He brought them into this world. He can take them out. He couldn't justify that same thing in his mind when he was thinking about potentially ending her life and potentially ending his wife's life. Now, I think when you're watching this court cam footage, you can see him through the fake ass crocodile tears. You can see him fighting off smiles. I think he enjoyed what he did, and if given the opportunity, he would have done the same thing again. And he is right where he belongs, in prison, and I hope he has the roughest prison stay that you can possibly think of. And he's probably going to, because from what I heard, they're going to put him on suicide watch for the rest of his life, which, to be honest, I knew suicide watch was a thing, but I didn't know you could be put on suicide watch for the rest of your life. So that's the case of Chad Doerman. Let me know in the comments what you think about this case. Why do you think he did what he did? Let me know also what other topics, whether they be true crime or just dark and mysterious content or anything like that. Like this video, comment, share it, all that good stuff. And until next time, guys, have fun and stay safe.